Police lights tore across the lake as my boat spun in tight circles, and the person screaming on deck wasn't a criminal, it was the HOA president who stole it. Marissa Alden clung to the rail while neighbors filmed like it was a show. Beside me stood Deputy Luke Harris, the county officer who handles every complaint within 10 miles of this lake. His eyes widened. "Daniel, how did she even get your boat running?" I lifted my phone, showing the alert that started everything. "She didn't start it," I said. "She triggered the trap I built for her." The first time I met Marissa Alden, she didn't knock, wave, or even pretend to be polite. She simply stepped out of her pearl-white Lexus, straightened her pastel blazer, and marched down my gravel path like she was inspecting troops. The oversized sunglasses, the thick clipboard, the HOA badge hanging from her neck, everything about her screamed one message: I'm in charge. "Good morning," she chirped, stopping on my dock as if she owned the boards under her feet. "I'm Marissa, president of Cedar Shore Estates. I'm here to help you get settled into our community." I didn't bother to hide my confusion. "I'm not in your community," I said. "My property isn't part of the HOA." Her smile didn't drop, it tightened. A smile stretched too far, like it was stapled in place. "Well," she said sweetly, flipping a tab on her clipboard, "the lakefront here has historically been treated as shared access. So, we have a few expectations. Dock scheduling boat launches community events." "No," I interrupted. "You won't be scheduling anything on my dock." That was the moment she changed. Just a flicker, a quick narrowing of the eyes behind those mirrored lenses, but enough for me to feel it. Marissa wasn't confused. She wasn't mistaken. She was offended. Offended that someone dared tell her no on land she believed she controlled. And from that moment on, she made it her mission to prove I didn't really have a choice. Long before Marissa Alden marched onto my dock with that clipboard of hers, I came to this lake for the exact opposite reason: silence. After 22 years bouncing between deployments and government contract work, I didn't want committees, rules, or neighbor drama. I wanted a place where the loudest thing at dawn was a loon call, not someone arguing about mailbox colors. When my uncle passed and left me his old cabin on the north bank of Cedar Lake, it felt like a lifeline. The cabin was small, weathered, and leaning just enough to make building inspectors nervous, but it was mine. More importantly, it sat outside the Cedar Shore Estates HOA boundary. The county map showed it clearly. My parcel was independent, grandfathered in long before the HOA existed. That independence mattered more than I realized. My days were simple. I woke up before the sun, brewed coffee so strong it could strip paint, and carried it down to the dock. I'd sand a loose board, tighten a hinge, or tinker with Ember, my custom electric boat I'd rebuilt from wiring to hull. I kept to myself. I didn't host parties. I didn't bother anyone, and for a while, nobody bothered me. But quiet places have cracks, and it didn't take long for them to show. A few mornings in, I noticed footprints on my shoreline. Beer cans tucked under my deck stairs. Ash from someone's old campfire in a ring I hadn't built. I'd step outside and see strangers strolling through my yard like it was a shortcut to the water. When I asked where they were headed, they said, "We always use this spot. Community has for years." That sentence sat wrong with me. So I drove to the county recorder's office, requested the full plot history, and reviewed every deed and boundary line. My uncle's signature was on the original survey long before Cedar Shore Estates started laying down rules about hedge height and kayak storage. The lakefront behind my cabin had never been HOA property, not on paper, not in law. But then the flyers started appearing in mailboxes. Then the cameras. Then Marissa. She didn't just test my patience, she tested my perimeter. And each time she pushed, I could feel that quiet life I'd come here to protect slipping 1 inch further away. I wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble had excellent aim. The first signs didn't look like an attack, they looked like politeness. A glossy brochure showed up under a rock near my mailbox. "Welcome to Cedar Shore Estates Guidelines for a Harmonious Lakefront." It read like a vacation ad written by someone who hated vacations. The cover photo, my dock, cropped just enough to pretend it wasn't. Then came the strangers. A couple in matching polos strolled up my gravel path one morning, pretending to birdwatch while taking photos of my gate, my camera mounts, even my private property sign. When I stepped outside, they jumped like raccoons, caught raiding a cooler. "Oh, just admiring nature," the woman chirped. "Nature's that way," I said, pointing to literally anywhere else. That afternoon, another flyer appeared: community boat launch schedule. Next to Saturday's slot was a tiny star reading North Landing. That was my shoreline, and it had never been called that until someone at the HOA invented it. Nothing was broken yet. Nothing stolen. Just little pushes. Little rehearsals for something bigger. The pushes got bolder. One humid afternoon, a Subaru Outback pulled up with 3 HOA volunteers wearing identical polo shirts and visors. They looked like a pastel-colored SWAT team. "Good afternoon," the tallest said, smiling with all teeth. "We're here on behalf of President Marissa Alden to coordinate shoreline access. Access to what I asked." "Your dock," she said brightly, as though I should be honored. "We'll need it unlocked on Saturday for kayak staging." "That's not happening." Her smile twitched. The shorter woman stepped in, holding a clipboard. "Sir, community participation is mandatory," for I pointed at the sign mounted on my gate, "Private dock, no public entry." She squinted. "This means you," she read aloud. "Exactly." They retreated, muttering about uncooperative residents. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "It would really help the community if you unlock the gate for this event. M.A." I replied with a photo of the lock and a single caption, "Gate will remain locked." That evening, I spotted Marissa herself, lingering near my gate, snapping close-up pictures of hinges and bolts, like she was gathering evidence for a heist. Her clipboard moved fast. Too fast. A few days later, things crossed a line. My motion sensor pinged at 1:14:07 p.m. I checked the feed expecting raccoons, but it wasn't raccoons. A man I'd never seen before crouched near my boathouse door, shining a flashlight along the frame, filming every inch of it with his phone. He wore a Cedar Shore windbreaker. "Committee member?" I guessed one of Marissa's new recruits. He tugged the handle, tested the hinges, zoomed in on my padlock like he was inspecting museum glass. When I stepped onto the porch and said, "Can I help you?" he bolted, nearly tripping over a tree root as he sprinted back to the road. The next morning, someone had left a fresh flyer taped to my mailbox, "Cedar Shore, North Landing, a community tradition." Front and center was a photo of my dock taken from inside my property. No permission, no shame. Trash also appeared again, a half-burned log, a discarded beer can, footprints leading straight across my shoreline. Someone had been there overnight. That's when I installed the steel gates. 2 of them bolted into concrete footers I poured myself. And on the lakeside gate, I hung a brass bell so loud it could wake the dead. If they wanted access, they'd have to ring first. 2 days later, a brown and gold county patrol SUV rolled up to my road gate. Deputy Luke Harris stepped out, hands resting casually on his duty belt. "Morning, Daniel," he said. "We've gotten a few calls. Complaints from HOA members claiming you're blocking community lake access." I exhaled slowly. "Luke, the county map says." He raised a hand. "I know. I already checked. Your property isn't HOA, not even close. But they're trying to frame it as a public safety concern. Something about you using cameras to intimidate them." I walked him through my setup. Footage of people crossing the fence line, timestamps, logs, screenshots of texts. Luke scanned it, jaw tightening. "They're building a case," he said. "I'm building one too." He nodded. "Keep recording everything. If anyone crosses the line again, call me." And Daniel, yeah, Marissa isn't trying to share the lake. She's trying to take it. The patrol SUV rumbled away, but the tension stayed behind. Silence followed, and that was more alarming than noise. No flyers, no volunteers, no pastel patrols. Then one morning, a glossy HOA poster appeared online, "Sunset Cruise Revival, hosted at Cedar Shore, North Landing." The picture behind the fancy font, my boathouse. That was it. I finished upgrading Ember, my electric boat, installed the hidden sensor under the console, synced it to my phone. Verified loop mode. If anyone tried to start the boat without my code, Ember would auto-lock the controls, glide out, and run a calm, perfectly safe figure 8 in open water until I reset it manually. No risk, no damage, just humiliation. The kind HOA presidents remember forever. So the next morning, I drove my Ram 1500 toward town, leaving my front gate pulled shut but not locked, just enough to whisper temptation. 20 minutes later, my phone vibrated once, then twice, then a rapid series of alerts: gate breach detected, boathouse motion, unauthorized ignition loop mode activated. When I opened the live feed, Ember was already drifting off the dock, and Marissa Alden was standing on it, screaming, angry, caught, exactly where I needed her to be. By the time I got back to my shoreline, the lake looked like a spotlighted stage. 2 county patrol SUVs idled near my gate, their lights washing the water in frantic reds and blues. Neighbors crowded the bank, phones up, pajamas still, on stunned by the spectacle looping across the lake. My boat Ember glided in perfect figure 8s, and on the deck clinging to the rail like a cat in a hurricane was none other than HOA President Marissa Alden, soaked, furious, and absolutely trapped. Deputy Luke Harris stood beside me, arms folded, eyes wide. "She stole your boat," he asked. "She thought she did," I said. Ember disagreed. "Right on, cue the onboard system projected across the lake. Unauthorized user. Autopilot loop mode active." Marissa's voice sliced through the evening. "Daniel, shut this thing off. This is illegal." Luke exhaled slowly. "Did she break in? Gate alert, boathouse, alert, unauthorized ignition?" I said, holding up my phone. "Everything's logged." He nodded once, the kind of nod that says, "This woman just torpedoed her own case." And with half the neighborhood watching, Marissa spun another helpless circle. 3 days later, we sat across from each other in a small mediation room at the county office. Me with my lawyer, Rachel Monroe, and Marissa with a young attorney who already looked like he regretted taking the job. Marissa started with drama worthy of an awards ceremony. "He trapped me. That boat locked me at sea. I feared for my life." Rachel tapped her tablet, and Ember's automated voice filled the room. "Autopilot loop mode active. Maximum safe speed, 6 knots. Emergency dock return available." Then came Marissa's own voice shouting, "Stop turning, I am the president." The mediator fought a smile. Rachel slid forward a packet GPS logs showing Ember never exceeded safe speeds. County parcel map proving my land was outside HOA jurisdiction. Security footage of Marissa breaching my gate and entering the boathouse. A screenshot of her Facebook post calling me a technological menace metadata, showing it came from her home Wi-Fi. Rachel didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. The evidence dismantled Marissa like a loose deck board. Finally, the mediator turned to her. "Miss Alden, did you have permission to be on his property?" Marissa hesitated, jaw trembling. "No." "Did he ever agree to community use of his dock?" "No." The mediator closed the folder. Complaint dismissed. With prejudice. Just like that, the loop ended. The ruling spread through Cedar Shore estates faster than gossip at a yard sale. Marissa tried to control the narrative, posting vague messages about legal injustice and uncooperative residents, but the HOA board had already received copies of the footage. Several members confronted her during a meeting I didn't even attend. One neighbor later told me she tried to claim Ember was malfunctioning government tech. Someone else asked, "Then why were you sneaking onto his property at sunrise?" The silence after that was apparently biblical. Within 48 hours, an anonymous document circulated around the neighborhood, a list of every stunt Marissa had pulled over the past 3 years. Misusing HOA funds, moving property markers, reassigning a neighbor's kayak rack because she didn't like the color. Her allies vanished overnight. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president. The next morning, a "for sale" sign stood crooked in her yard. By evening, her pearl-white Lexus rolled down the street trunk, packed curtains drawn, Marissa staring stiffly ahead, like the lake itself had betrayed her. I watched from my dock as Ember drifted gently at her mooring sunlight, painting the hull in warm gold. The lake was quiet again, beautifully, entirely quiet. And for the first time since Marissa Alden stepped onto my property, my silence finally belonged to me again. In the days after Marissa's exit, the lake felt different, lighter, almost like the water itself had unclenched its jaw. For the first time since moving here, I woke up to silence that wasn't waiting to be interrupted. No footsteps on my gravel, no flyers tucked under rocks, no pastel-colored patrols drifting by to observe shoreline harmony. Just the morning sun, my coffee, and the easy rhythm of waves brushing the dock. A few neighbors I'd never spoken to before started showing up not on my property but at the edge of the street, offering awkward thumbs-ups or nods of respect. One couple even left a 6-pack of craft beer on my porch with a note, "Thanks for standing your ground." Some of us were tired of the circus. I didn't reply, but I kept the beer cold. 2 days later, I found a letter carefully folded inside my mailbox. The envelope was lavender, the handwriting elegant. "Dear Mr. Cole, as a longtime member of the Cedar Shore Board, I want to personally thank you for doing what none of us had the courage to do. You reminded this place what boundaries actually mean. Sincerely, Elaine Porter." I pinned that one to the fridge. Slowly, the neighborhood recalibrated. Without Marissa steering the narrative, people relaxed. Joggers stopped pretending my dock was a public landmark. Kayakers paddled somewhere other than my shoreline. And for once, nobody was sneaking around with a clipboard. Peace didn't return all at once. It drifted back in, piece by piece, like morning fog finding its way across the lake. A week after the mediation ruling, the newly reorganized Cedar Shore Board released a community statement, one I read 5 times just to savor it. Cedar Shore Estates will honor all private property boundaries moving forward. Any previous misunderstandings regarding non-HOA parcels are now fully resolved. In HOA, language that was the equivalent of an apology carved in stone. They also announced a full audit of board activity from the previous administration. Rumor had it that Marissa had approved questionable expenses decor for official events, a set of engraved clipboards, even a subscription to a conflict resolution workshop she never attended. Not my business, but poetic. Rachel, my lawyer, emailed me a short summary of what the dismissal meant. You're clear. She cannot refile. You have the upper hand now. If she causes trouble again, even indirectly, call me. It felt strange, realizing the storm had passed. Not because it ended loudly, but because it ended properly. The right way, the legal way, the undeniable way. And that mattered more than any revenge. By mid-October, the lake had settled into a quiet rhythm again. Leaves turned amber. The mornings grew crisp enough to make coffee steam look like smoke rising from some ancient ritual. I spent more time on Ember, checking the wiring, upgrading the sensors, polishing the hull, until she reflected the shoreline like a mirror. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the familiar rustling near my trash can announced the arrival of my newest unofficial roommate, a plump raccoon I decided to call Marshall. He glanced at me unbothered as if to say, I live here too. Get used to it. Fair enough. He didn't file complaints. He didn't organize committees. He minded his business. I respected that. A few nights later, Deputy Harris stopped by during his patrol. He leaned on the railing, looking out over the calm water. Quiet. Feels like the lake finally exhaled. He nodded. Oh, and the board. They put your dock on the do not approach list. Mandatory training for new HOA members. I laughed. A whole training module for my dock. Yep. I think you're a landmark now. We shared a beer as Ember hummed softly on her charger, the blue indicator light pulsing like the boat was breathing. As the sky turned from orange to violet, I walked to the end of the dock, hands in my pockets, letting the breeze roll off the water. For months I'd fought a war I never asked for, a quiet war built on arrogance, entitlement, and one very determined HOA president. But in the end, peace wasn't given to me. Peace was something I earned through patience evidence and one very stubborn boat. I glanced back at Ember, her hull glowing in the dusk. Good work, I whispered. You kept me sane. And for the first time since moving here, I believed it when I thought, this lake is mine. Not to own, but to protect. And now, finally, to enjoy. The water rippled softly in the evening light, carrying that truth across the cove. Peace, real peace, had a sound. And tonight it sounded like nothing at all.